Imagine discovering that your father, a highly respected surgeon, is being falsely accused, that your husband has been living a double life with another family, and that the prestigious clinic bearing your family's name is at the center of a scandal shaking the entire city of Denver. As if that weren't enough, you find yourself forced to take a job as a janitor in the very same clinic that was once your family's greatest pride. What would you do? Walk away from the truth, or fight to uncover it no matter the cost? This is the story of Laura Carter, a woman facing betrayal, loss, and the chance for redemption in an emotional journey of self-discovery. But be warned, nothing is as it seems. Get ready for a gripping tale filled with breathtaking twists that will keep you hooked until the very last moment. The golden light of a late summer evening cascaded through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Carter penthouse, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. Laura Carter stood before the mirror, adjusting the delicate pearl necklace that graced her slender neck. Her reflection showed a woman in her mid-30s, her chestnut hair swept into an elegant updo, blue eyes bright with anticipation for the evening ahead. "Ethan, have you seen my clutch?" Laura called out, her voice echoing through the spacious bedroom. A moment later, her husband appeared in the doorway, a vision in his tailored charcoal suit. Dr. Ethan Reeves, with his salt and pepper hair and piercing green eyes, exuded an air of confidence that had first drawn Laura to him a decade ago. "Check the hall table, darling. I think I saw it there earlier," Ethan replied, his voice smooth as velvet. He crossed the room, placing a gentle kiss on Laura's cheek. "You look stunning as always." Laura smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Thank you. I want everything to be perfect for Dad's celebration tonight." As she made her way to the hall, Laura's heels clicked against the floor, a rhythm that seemed to echo the steady beat of her heart. Tonight was more than just a party. It was a testament to her father's legacy. Dr. William Carter, renowned surgeon and pillar of the Denver medical community, was celebrating 40 years of practice. The event at the Denver Art Museum would be the social highlight of the season. Laura found her clutch exactly where Ethan had suggested. As she picked it up, her eyes fell on a framed photo on the table, a candid shot from her wedding day. There she was, radiant in white, flanked by Ethan and her father. William's eyes crinkled with joy, his arm protectively around his only daughter. The sight brought a lump to Laura's throat. "Ready to go?" Ethan's voice broke through her reverie. Laura nodded, blinking away the hint of tears. "Yes, let's not keep Dad waiting." The drive to the museum was filled with comfortable silence, broken only by the soft strains of classical music from the car's speakers. Denver's skyline glittered against the darkening sky, a familiar sight that never failed to fill Laura with a sense of belonging. This was her city, her world, and tonight it would celebrate one of its finest. As they pulled up to the museum, Laura couldn't help but gasp. The entrance was adorned with twinkling lights and elegant floral arrangements. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the doors, lined with local press and well-wishers. "Dad really outdid himself this time," Laura murmured, a mix of pride and something else. Was it unease? Stirring in her stomach, Ethan squeezed her hand reassuringly. "He deserves it, Laura. Your father's work has changed countless lives." They made their way inside, greeted by the soft clink of champagne glasses and the low hum of conversation. The grand hall of the museum had been transformed into a glittering wonderland, with ice sculptures and elaborate centerpieces adorning every table. Laura's eyes scanned the room, searching for the man of the hour. She spotted him near the bar, engaged in animated conversation with a group of colleagues. Dr. William Carter cut an impressive figure, his silver hair and distinguished features making him look every inch the respected surgeon he was. "Dad!" Laura called out, making her way towards him. William turned, his face lighting up at the sight of his daughter. "Laura, my dear." He embraced her warmly, then shook Ethan's hand. "And Ethan, good to see you, son." "Congratulations, William," Ethan said, his tone warm. 40 years is quite the achievement." William waved a hand dismissively, though his eyes twinkled with pride. "Oh, it's nothing. Just doing what I love. But tell me, how are things at the clinic? I hear you've been making some impressive strides in your research." As Ethan launched into a detailed explanation of his latest project, Laura found her attention wandering. Her eyes drifted across the room, taking in the faces of the guests. There were doctors, nurses, philanthropists, and local celebrities, all here to honor her father. A flash of movement caught her eye. A woman in a sleek red dress was weaving through the crowd, her eyes fixed on William. There was something familiar about her, but Laura couldn't quite place it. Before she could ponder further, the woman disappeared into the throng of guests. "Laura!" Her father's voice snapped her back to the present. "Are you all right, dear? You seemed miles away." Laura forced a smile. "Of course, Dad. Just taking in the amazing turnout. You must be so proud." William's eyes softened. "I am, but not because of this." He gestured around the room. "My greatest pride is you, Laura. You and the family we've built. Everything else is just icing on the cake." The sincerity in his voice made Laura's heart swell. She leaned in to hug him again, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne. For a moment she was a little girl again, safe in her father's arms. The moment was broken by the sharp trill of a cell phone. William pulled back, fishing the device from his pocket with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry I have to take this. It might be important." Laura watched as her father stepped away, his brow furrowing as he listened to the caller. A chill ran down her spine, though she couldn't explain why. Ethan placed a hand on the small of her back. "Everything okay?" Laura nodded, though the unease lingered. "Yeah, I'm sure it's fine. Probably just a colleague with a question." But as the minutes ticked by and William didn't return, Laura felt her anxiety growing. She excused herself from Ethan and made her way through the crowd, searching for her father. She found him in a quiet corner, his face ashen as he ended the call. "Dad? What's wrong?" William looked up, startled. For a split second, Laura saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before, fear. But it was gone so quickly, she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. "Laura, I'm so sorry, but I have to go," William said, his voice strained. "There's an emergency at the hospital, a patient. I'm the only one who can help." Laura frowned. "But Dad, this is your night. Can't someone else handle it?" William shook his head firmly. "No, it has to be me. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Please make my apologies to the guests. I'll make it up to everyone, I promise." Before Laura could protest further, William was gone, slipping out a side door with a speed that belied his years. She stood there, rooted to the spot, a cold feeling settling in her stomach. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Her father, who had spent weeks planning this event, who had been so excited to celebrate with his colleagues and friends, wouldn't just leave like this. Not unless it was truly dire. As Laura made her way back to Ethan, her mind raced. What kind of emergency could be so urgent? And why did her father look so scared? The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Laura played the role of gracious hostess, making excuses for her father's absence and ensuring the guests were well taken care of. But her heart wasn't in it. Her eyes kept drifting to the door, hoping to see William return with an explanation. He never did. As the last of the guests departed and the cleanup crew began their work, Laura found herself standing on the museum's balcony, staring out at the twinkling lights of Denver. Ethan joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts," he murmured. Laura leaned into him, seeking comfort. "I'm worried about Dad. This isn't like him, Ethan. Something feels off." Ethan pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'm sure everything's fine. You know how dedicated your father is to his patients. He probably just got caught up in a complicated case." Laura wanted to believe him. She desperately wanted to shake off the nagging feeling of dread that had settled over her. But as they drove home through the quiet streets of Denver, she couldn't escape the sense that everything was about to change. Little did she know, the comfortable life she had always known was already beginning to unravel. The threads of secrets and lies that had been carefully hidden for years were about to be pulled, revealing a truth that would shake the very foundations of her world. As Laura drifted off to sleep that night, her dreams were haunted by fragments of conversations and half-seen faces, the woman in the red dress, her father's fearful eyes, a ringing phone that never stopped. In the darkness of their bedroom, Ethan's eyes remained open, fixed on the ceiling. His fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the bedsheet, betraying the turmoil beneath his calm exterior. He had his own secrets, his own fears, and as the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, he made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events from which there would be no turning back. The stage was set, the players were in place, and in the heart of Denver, a storm was brewing, one that would test the bonds of family, love, and loyalty to their very limits. The weeks following William Carter's abrupt departure from his anniversary celebration passed in a haze of uncertainty for Laura. Her father's sudden absences and cryptic explanations left her feeling increasingly uneasy. The bustling halls of Denver General Hospital, once a second home to her, now seemed charged with an undercurrent of tension she couldn't quite place. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled outside her kitchen window, Laura's world shattered with the ring of a doorbell. Two stern-faced detectives stood on her doorstep, their badges glinting in the early light. "Mrs. Reeves?" the older of the two asked, his voice gravelly. "I'm Detective Simmons. This is my partner, Detective Ramirez. We need to speak with you about your father, Dr. William Carter." Laura's heart plummeted. "What about my father? Is he all right?" Detective Ramirez's eyes softened slightly. "He's fine, ma'am, but we need to ask you some questions. May we come in?" In a daze, Laura led them to the living room. The detectives perched uncomfortably on her plush sofa, looking out of place among the tasteful decor. "Mrs. Reeves?" Simmons began, his tone carefully neutral. "Are you aware of any unusual activities your father might have been involved in at the hospital?" Laura frowned. "Unusual? I'm not sure what you mean. My father is a respected surgeon. He saved countless lives." Ramirez leaned forward, her dark eyes intent. "We're investigating a large-scale drug trafficking operation, Mrs. Reeves. Prescription opioids are being diverted from several hospitals in the Denver area. Your father's name has come up in our investigation." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Laura gripped the armrest of her chair, struggling to process the detective's words. That's impossible. There must be some mistake." "We hope so," Simmons said, not unkindly. "But we need to follow every lead. Can you think of anything? Any change in your father's behavior recently that might be relevant?" Laura's mind raced. The late-night phone calls, the sudden departures, the fear in his eyes at the anniversary party. But surely there had to be another explanation. "He's been busy," she said weakly. "There was an emergency the night of his party. But that's not unusual in his line of work." The detectives exchanged a glance. "We'll need to speak with your husband as well," Ramirez said. "Is Dr. Reeves available?" A chill ran down Laura's spine. "He's at the clinic. I can give you the address." As the detectives left, promising to be in touch, Laura sank onto the sofa, her mind reeling. The accusation against her father was absurd, unthinkable. William Carter had dedicated his life to helping others. He would never be involved in something so heinous. Would he? The seed of doubt once planted began to grow. Laura found herself scrutinizing every interaction, every memory, searching for signs she might have missed. Had there been clues all along? Had she been willfully blind? Her phone buzzed, startling her from her thoughts. It was a text from Katie, her 19-year-old daughter who was away at college in Boulder. "Mom, what's going on? There are rumors all over social media about Grandpa. Call me." Laura's fingers trembled as she dialed Katie's number. Her daughter answered on the first ring, her voice tight with worry. "Mom, is it true? They're saying Grandpa's being investigated for drug trafficking." Laura closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "I don't know, sweetheart. The police were just here asking questions, but it has to be a mistake. You know your grandfather." There was a long pause. When Katie spoke again, her voice was small, uncertain. "Do we, though? I mean, really?" The question hit Laura like a physical blow. She thought of all the times William had missed family dinners, birthdays, school events, always for work, always for his patients. Had it all been a lie? "I need to go," Laura said abruptly. "I'll call you later, okay? I love you." She ended the call before Katie could respond, her mind already racing to her next move. She needed to talk to Ethan. He worked closely with her father at the clinic. If anyone knew what was really going on, it would be him. The drive to the Carter Reeves Medical Center seemed to take an eternity. Laura's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as she navigated the busy Denver streets. The clinic, a sleek, modern building in the heart of the city, had always been a source of pride for her family. Now it loomed before her like a fortress hiding dark secrets. As she strode through the reception area, Laura noticed the staff averting their eyes, conversations dying as she passed. News traveled fast in this city. Ethan's office door was closed. Laura knocked, then entered without waiting for a response. Her husband looked up from his computer, his face unreadable. "The police were at our house," Laura said without preamble. "They're investigating Dad for drug trafficking. Did you know about this?" Ethan's pause before answering was a fraction too long. "I heard rumors," he said carefully. "But Laura, You can't believe everything you hear. Your father. Don't. Laura cut him off, her voice sharp. Don't tell me what my father would or wouldn't do. I need the truth, Ethan, all of it. For a moment she thought he might confess, might unburden himself of whatever knowledge he was clearly carrying. But then his expression shuttered, and he stood circling his desk to take her hands in his. Laura, honey, I know this is difficult, but we need to trust the process. If your father is innocent, that will come out. And if he's not... Ethan trailed off, his eyes filled with what looked like genuine sympathy. But something in his tone, in the careful way he was watching her, set off alarm bells in Laura's mind. She pulled her hands away, taking a step back. What aren't you telling me, Ethan? Before he could answer, there was a commotion in the hallway. Raised voices, the sound of hurried footsteps. Laura turned just as the office door burst open. A woman Laura had never seen before stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger. She was strikingly beautiful, with long dark hair and piercing blue eyes, but it was the way she looked at Ethan, a mixture of fury and betrayal that made Laura's blood run cold. You bastard, the woman spat. You said you'd handle this. You promised me it wouldn't touch us. Ethan's face drained of color. Rachel, what are you doing here? You can't... Can't what? Rachel's eyes flickered to Laura, widening in recognition. Oh, I see. You haven't told her, have you? Laura felt as though she were watching the scene from outside her body. Told me what? She heard herself ask, her voice eerily calm. Rachel's laugh was bitter, cutting. Told you about us, sweetheart. About our family. Did you really think you were the only one? The world seemed to tilt again, the floor shifting beneath Laura's feet. She reached out, steadying herself against Ethan's desk. What is she talking about? She demanded, her eyes fixed on her husband. Ethan's shoulders sagged, defeat written in every line of his body. Laura, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out like this. Find out what? Laura's voice rose, hysteria creeping in at the edges. What exactly am I finding out, Ethan? It was Rachel who answered, her voice dripping with venom. That your perfect husband has been living a double life for the past 10 years, that we have 2 children together, that everything you thought you knew is a lie. The silence that followed was deafening. Laura looked from Rachel to Ethan, searching for any sign that this was some cruel joke, some horrible mistake. But Ethan's guilty expression told her everything she needed to know. Get out, Laura whispered, her voice shaking. Both of you, get out. Rachel didn't need to be told twice. She shot Ethan one last venomous look before storming out. Ethan took a step towards Laura, his hand outstretched. Laura, please, let me explain. Explain? Laura's laugh was hollow, bordering on hysterical. Explain how you've been lying to me for a decade. How you have another family, another life. No, Ethan, I don't want your explanations. I want you gone. She turned on her heel, fleeing the office, the clinic, the life she thought she knew. The autumn air hit her like a slap as she burst onto the street, gasping for breath. Passers-by stared, but Laura barely noticed. Her world had collapsed, and she was drowning in the rubble. In the days that followed, Laura's life unraveled with dizzying speed. The scandal surrounding her father grew, dominating local news and spreading through social media like wildfire. William Carter, the respected surgeon, accused of being at the center of a massive opioid trafficking ring. His colleagues distanced themselves. His patients sought care elsewhere, and the Carter Reeves Medical Center found itself under intense scrutiny. Ethan, in a move that shouldn't have surprised Laura but somehow still did, sided with his mistress. He claimed ignorance of William's alleged crimes, positioning himself as another victim of the doctor's deception. The betrayal cut deep, compounding Laura's pain and confusion. One rainy afternoon, as Laura sat in her empty house, surrounded by the trappings of a life that no longer felt like hers, her phone buzzed with a text from Katie. "Mom, I'm coming home. You shouldn't be alone right now." Laura's heart swelled with gratitude, even as guilt gnawed at her. She had been so caught up in her own pain that she had neglected to consider how this was affecting her daughter. Katie arrived that evening, her face pale and drawn. She dropped her bags in the foyer and wrapped Laura in a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I can't believe Dad would do this to us." Laura held her daughter tight, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. "I can't either, sweetheart, but we'll get through this. Together." As they settled in the living room with mugs of tea, Katie's phone chimed. A small smile, the first Laura had seen in days, touched her daughter's lips. "Who is it?" Laura asked, grateful for any distraction. Katie's cheeks flushed slightly. "Just a friend, Andrew. He's been really supportive through all of this." Laura raised an eyebrow. "Andrew? Is this a new development?" "Kind of," Katie admitted. "He lives in my dorm. We've been hanging out a lot lately. He's different from the guys I usually date. More mature, I guess." Laura nodded, trying to summon enthusiasm for her daughter's budding romance. But her mind was already drifting, wondering how long it would be before this Andrew showed his true colors, before he hurt Katie the way Ethan had hurt her. A sharp knock at the door startled them both. Laura frowned, not expecting any visitors. She opened the door to find a tall, broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair and intense dark eyes standing on her porch. "Mrs. Reeves?" he asked, his voice gruff. "I'm Oliver Blackwood. I live next door." Laura blinked in surprise. She had seen moving trucks at the neighboring house a few weeks ago, but hadn't had a chance to meet the new occupants. "Oh, hello," she said, forcing a polite smile. "I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to welcome you to the neighborhood. Things have been hectic." Oliver's expression didn't change. "I know who you are," he said bluntly, "and I know what's been going on with your family." Laura stiffened, her guard instantly up. "I see. And you thought now would be a good time to introduce yourself. I thought you should know," Oliver continued, ignoring her sarcasm, "that there are reporters camped out at the end of the street. They've been asking questions about your father and about you." The news hit Laura like a physical blow. She sagged against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted. "Thank you for telling me," she managed. Oliver hesitated, then added gruffly, "Look, I know it's none of my business, but if you need anything, to borrow my car to avoid the vultures, or just, I don't know, a place to hide out for a while, my door's open." The unexpected kindness from this stranger brought tears to Laura's eyes. She blinked them back, nodding. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood, I appreciate that." As Oliver turned to leave, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her new neighbor than met the eye, but she had no energy to puzzle it out now. Closing the door, she leaned against it, closing her eyes. "Mum?" Katie's voice was hesitant. "Who was that?" Laura sighed. "Just a neighbor. Apparently, we're about to become front-page news." The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, press avoidance, and sleepless nights. Laura watched helplessly as her father was arrested, her husband filed for divorce, and her life savings dwindled under the weight of mounting legal fees. The final blow came on a cold November morning. Laura sat across from her lawyer, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, who was looking at her with poorly concealed pity. "I'm sorry, Laura," Sarah said gently, "but with the clinic's assets frozen and Ethan's claim on the house, I'm afraid you're going to have to move out." Laura stared at her, uncomprehending. "Move out? But where am I supposed to go?" Sarah reached across the desk, squeezing Laura's hand. "Do you have any family you can stay with? Friends?" Laura laughed bitterly. "Family? My father's in jail, my husband has another wife, and my daughter's away at college. As for friends..." She trailed off, realizing with a pang how many of her so-called friends had distanced themselves since the scandal broke. "I see," Sarah said softly. "Well, there are some temporary housing options we can look into. It won't be what you're used to, but..." "No," Laura cut her off, a sudden fierce determination rising within her. "No, I'll figure something out. I always have." As she left the lawyer's office, Laura's mind raced. She had gone from having everything to having nothing in the span of a few short weeks. Her comfortable life, her social status, her very identity, all of it had been stripped away. Standing on the busy Denver street, watching people rush by, all oblivious to her inner turmoil, Laura made a decision. She would not be a victim. She would not crumble under the weight of her family's sins and her husband's betrayal. She would rebuild. Somehow, someway, she would find a way to reclaim her life, to uncover the truth and to emerge stronger on the other side. But as she hailed a taxi to take her back to the house that was no longer hers, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The storm that had been brewing since that fateful night of her father's anniversary party was far from over. And in the eye of that storm, Laura Carter Reeves stood alone, battered but unbroken, ready to face whatever came next. The harsh fluorescent lights of the Carter Reeves Medical Center buzzed overhead as Laura pushed her cleaning cart down the sterile hallway. The irony wasn't lost on her. Just months ago, she had walked these same corridors as the founder's daughter, head held high, greeted with respectful nods and warm smiles. Now she was lucky if anyone met her eyes at all. It had been a moment of desperate inspiration that led her here. With no home, dwindling funds, and a stubborn refusal to accept charity, Laura had swallowed her pride and applied for a job at the very clinic that bore her family name. The HR manager's face had been a study in discomfort as he offered her the only position available, night shift cleaner. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Reeves?" he had asked, unable to hide his pity, given the circumstances. "It's Ms. Carter now," Laura had corrected him, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "And yes, I'm sure." Now, 3 weeks into her new role, Laura found an odd sort of comfort in the mundane tasks of cleaning. There was a simplicity to it, a clear purpose that had been lacking in her life of luxury. Mop the floors, disinfect the surfaces, empty the trash. Tangible goals she could achieve, small victories in a world that seemed determined to defeat her. As she worked her way through the clinic, Laura couldn't help but notice things she had overlooked before. The way certain doctors lingered in the pharmacy longer than necessary. The hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. The locked office that had once belonged to her father, now a silent sentinel holding who knew what secrets. It was during one of these late-night shifts that Laura's path crossed with Oliver Blackwood's once again. She was emptying trash bins in the waiting area when the clinic's front doors slid open, admitting a gust of cold air and her enigmatic neighbor. Oliver's eyes widened slightly in recognition, but he said nothing as he approached the reception desk. Laura couldn't help but overhear his gruff request for pain medication, her curiosity piqued by the stiffness in his gait and the barely concealed wince as he shifted his weight. As the receptionist processed his prescription, Oliver's gaze drifted to Laura. There was no pity in his eyes, no judgment, just a quiet acknowledgement that sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, his voice low. Laura straightened, pushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Life's full of surprises lately," she replied, aiming for lightness, but hearing the bitterness creep in. Oliver nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Ain't that the truth?" He hesitated, then added, "You holding up okay?" The simple question, asked without pretense or ulterior motive, nearly undid her. Laura felt tears pricking at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. "I'm managing," she said, proud of how steady her voice remained. "Good," Oliver replied. "That's good." He accepted his medication from the receptionist and turned to leave, then paused. "You know, if you ever need a break from all this," he gestured vaguely at the clinic, "my offer still stands. Sometimes a change of scenery can help clear the head." Before Laura could respond, he was gone, the doors sliding shut behind him. She stood there for a moment, oddly touched by the gruff kindness of this man she barely knew. The next evening, as Laura approached her small rented room in a rundown part of town, she was surprised to see Katie waiting for her, pacing nervously on the cracked sidewalk. "Katie," Laura quickened her pace, worry creasing her brow. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" Katie turned, her face a mixture of relief and anxiety. "Mum, I needed to talk to you in person." Laura unlocked the door to her room, ushering Katie inside. The space was tiny, barely large enough for a bed and a small desk, but Laura had done her best to make it homey, with a few cherished photos and a vase of fresh flowers. "What's going on?" Laura asked, sitting on the bed and patting the space beside her. "You should be at school. Did something happen?" Katie perched on the edge of the bed, her hands twisting in her lap. I've been thinking about dropping out," she blurted out. "Just for a semester or two to help you. This isn't fair, Mum. You shouldn't have to do this alone." Laura felt her heart constrict. "Oh, honey, no," she said softly, pulling Katie into a hug. "Your education is everything. I won't let you sacrifice that for me." "But, Mum," Katie protested, her voice muffled against Laura's shoulder. "You're working as a janitor in Dad and Grandpa's clinic. How is that okay?" Laura pulled back, cupping Katie's face in her hands. "Listen to me. What I'm doing, it's not ideal, but it's honest work. And it's temporary. I'm going to figure this out, Katie. But I need to know that you're okay, that you're building your future. That's what matters to me." Katie's eyes filled with tears. "I feel so helpless," she whispered. "Everything's falling apart and I don't know how to fix it." "You don't have to fix it, sweetheart," Laura said firmly. "That's not your job. Your job is to focus on your studies, to be young and to live your life. Let me handle the rest." As they talked into the night, Laura felt the distance that had grown between them since the scandal began to shrink. Katie told her about her classes, her friends, and hesitantly about Andrew. "He's really great, Mom," Katie said, a small smile playing on her lips. "He doesn't care about all the gossip and stuff. He just sees me, you know?" Laura nodded, trying to ignore the twinge of worry in her gut. She wanted to believe in this Andrew, to trust that he was as good as Katie believed, but experience had made her wary. "I'm glad you have someone supportive," she said carefully. "Just be careful with your heart, okay? And remember, you can always come to me no matter what." As Katie left, promising to call more often, Laura felt a mix of emotions wash over her. Pride in her daughter's strength and compassion, fear for the challenges Katie might face because of their family's disgrace, and a renewed determination to uncover the truth behind the accusations against her father. The next few weeks saw Laura settling into a routine. By day, she slept and researched, poring over news articles and legal documents, trying to piece together the puzzle of her father's alleged crimes. By night, she cleaned the clinic, her eyes and ears open for any clue, any slip of the tongue that might shed light on what really happened. It was during one of these night shifts that Laura's world tilted on its axis once again. She was mopping the floor outside the pharmacy when she heard raised voices from within. Curiosity overrode caution, and she found herself edging closer to the door, straining to hear. "Can't keep this up," a man's voice hissed. "The feds are sniffing around. Carter's not here to take the fall anymore." "Calm down," a woman replied, her tone icy. With a jolt, Laura recognized Rachel Sullivan's voice. "Everything's under control. We just need to stick to the plan." "The plan?" the man scoffed. "The plan was for the old man to take the blame. Now he's in jail and his daughter's snooping around. How long before she figures it out?" Laura's heart raced. She leaned closer, desperate to hear more, but at that moment, her mop bucket scraped against the floor with a loud screech. The voices inside the pharmacy fell silent. Laura scrambled back, trying to look busy as the pharmacy door flew open. Rachel Sullivan emerged, her eyes narrowing as they landed on Laura. "What are you doing here?" Rachel demanded, her voice sharp. Laura straightened, meeting Rachel's gaze with as much composure as she could muster. "My job," she replied evenly, gesturing to the mop. "The floors don't clean themselves." Rachel's eyes flicked to the man behind her, Dr. Jennings, Laura realized, one of the clinic's senior physicians. His face was pale, a sheen of sweat on his brow. "Well," Rachel said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "don't let us keep you from your important work. Come on, Mark, we're done here." As they brushed past her, Laura caught a whiff of Rachel's expensive perfume, a scent that once would have made her think of exclusive boutiques and ladies' lunches. Now, it only reminded her of betrayal and loss. Once they were gone, Laura sagged against the wall, her mind reeling. What had she just overheard? What plan were they talking about? And most importantly, what did it mean for her father? The next day, exhausted from her shift but too wired to sleep, Laura found herself knocking on Oliver's door. She wasn't sure what drove her there, the need for a friendly face perhaps, or the instinct that her gruff neighbor might have insights she lacked. Oliver answered, his eyebrows rising in surprise. "Laura, everything okay?" I'm not sure," Laura admitted. "Can I come in? I could use someone to talk to." Oliver hesitated for just a moment before stepping aside. "Sure, come on in." His home was spartanly furnished but neat, with a few framed photographs on the walls, mostly landscapes, Laura noticed, no people. As they settled in his small living room, Laura found herself studying Oliver more closely. The way he moved, careful and measured, as if in constant pain. The faraway look that sometimes clouded his eyes, as if seeing things she couldn't imagine. "So," Oliver said, breaking the silence, "what's on your mind?" Laura took a deep breath and told him everything. The overheard conversation, her suspicions about her father's innocence, her growing certainty that there was more to the story than anyone was telling. Oliver listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You're playing a dangerous game, Laura," he said finally, his voice grave. "These people, whoever they are, they're not going to just stand by while you dig into their business." "I know," Laura replied, a hint of desperation creeping into her voice. "But what choice do I have? My father's in jail, my whole life has been torn apart, I need to know the truth." Oliver sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "Truth's a tricky thing," he muttered, almost to himself. Then, louder, "All right, if you're determined to do this, you need to be smart about it, careful, and you need allies." "Allies?" Laura echoed, hope flickering in her chest. "Are you offering to help?" A ghost of a smile touched Oliver's lips. "Let's just say I've got some experience with unconventional problem-solving, and I owe your father a debt." Before Laura could ask what he meant, Oliver stood, wincing slightly as he did so. "But that's a story for another time. For now, get some rest. You look like you need it. And Laura?" His eyes met hers, intense and serious. "Watch your back, this isn't over. Not by a long shot." As Laura made her way back to her small room, her mind buzzed with new possibilities. She had an ally now, someone who believed in her, who was willing to help. It wasn't much, but it was a start. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that across town, in a luxurious penthouse apartment, Ethan Reeves was having a very different conversation. "She knows something." Rachel Sullivan paced the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "That little eavesdropping stunt at the clinic, she's getting too close." Ethan sighed, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "What do you want me to do, Rachel? She's still Katie's mother. I can't just—" "Can't what?" Rachel snapped. "Protect what we've built. Everything we've worked for. Don't go soft on me now, Ethan. Not when we're so close." Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his choices pressing down on him. When he opened them again, his gaze was cold, resolved. "All right," he said quietly. "What's our next move?" As the Denver night settled around them, two very different plans were set in motion. Laura, armed with determination and a newfound ally, prepared to uncover the truth that had destroyed her family. And in the shadows, those who had orchestrated that destruction plotted to ensure their secrets remained buried. The game was changing, the stakes rising, and caught in the middle was a truth so explosive, it threatened to shatter everything Laura thought she knew about her family, her life and herself. In the quiet hours before dawn, as the city slept, Laura found herself unable to rest. The weight of her discoveries, the uncertainty of her future, and the glimmer of hope that Oliver's support had kindled all swirled in her mind, keeping sleep at bay. She thought of Katie, of the strain this ordeal had put on their relationship. Her daughter's offer to drop out of school still haunted her. Laura was determined to shield Katie from the worst of this, to ensure that at least one of them could have a normal life. But she knew that the distance growing between them was hurting Katie as much as it was hurting her. With a sigh, Laura reached for her phone, hesitating only a moment before typing out a message. "Hey, sweetheart. Just wanted to say I love you. Stay focused on your studies, but don't forget to have some fun too. You deserve it. And Katie, I'm going to fix this. I promise." She hit send, then lay back, staring at the cracked ceiling of her rented room. As the first rays of sunlight began to peek through her threadbare curtains, Laura made a silent vow. She would uncover the truth, clear her father's name, and rebuild the life that had been stolen from her, no matter the cost. Little did she know, the cost would be higher than she could have ever imagined. The early morning stillness of the clinic was shattered by the sharp click of heels against linoleum. Laura looked up from her cleaning cart, her heart sinking as she saw Detective Simmons striding towards her, his face grim. "Mrs. Reeves," he began, then caught himself. "Miss Carter, we need to talk." Laura straightened, her grip tightening on the mop handle. "What about, Detective?" Simmons glanced around the empty hallway. "Not here. Is there somewhere more private we can speak?" With a nod, Laura led him to a small break room. As soon as the door closed behind them, Simmons turned to her, his expression severe. "Ms. Carter, we have reason to believe you may be involved in the drug trafficking operation we've been investigating. Several witnesses have come forward, claiming they've seen you accessing restricted areas of the clinic after hours." The accusation hit Laura like a physical blow. She stumbled back, gripping the edge of a table for support. That's ridiculous," she sputtered. "I work here as a cleaner. Of course I access different areas of the clinic." Simmons's eyes narrowed. "Including the pharmacy, the records room, your father's old office?" Laura's mind raced. She had been in those areas, but not for the reasons they suspected. How could she explain her own investigation without sounding guilty? "Detective," she began carefully, "I understand how this looks, but I swear to you, I'm not involved in any illegal activities. I'm just I'm trying to understand what happened. To clear my father's name. Simmons sighed, his stern demeanor softening slightly. Ms. Carter, I understand this is difficult for you, but interfering with an ongoing investigation is a serious offense. If you know something, anything, now is the time to come forward. Laura met his gaze steadily. I don't know anything concrete, Detective, but I'm starting to believe that my father might be innocent, that he might have been set up. A flicker of interest crossed Simmons' face. Do you have any evidence to support that claim? Laura hesitated. Should she tell him about the conversation she overheard? About her suspicions regarding Rachel and Dr. Jennings? But something held her back. Until she knew more, until she was certain, she couldn't risk tipping her hand. Not yet, she admitted. But I'm working on it. Simmons studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, Ms. Carter. I'll level with you. We're not convinced your father was working alone. If there are bigger players involved, we want to know. But you need to be careful. If you're right, if there is a larger conspiracy at play, you could be putting yourself in danger. As he turned to leave, Simmons paused at the door. One more thing. Stay away from Oliver Blackwood. The man's got a complicated past. He could be trouble. Laura's eyebrows shot up. You know Oliver? But Simmons was already gone, leaving Laura with more questions than answers. The next few days passed in a blur of anxiety and determination. Laura threw herself into her work, both her cleaning duties and her clandestine investigation. She catalogued every unusual interaction she witnessed, every whispered conversation, every inconsistency in the clinic's operations. It was during one of these late-night observation sessions that Laura's path crossed with Rachel Sullivan's once again. Laura was pretending to mop the floor near the pharmacy when Rachel emerged, her face drawn and tired. For a moment, the two women stared at each other, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. Then, to Laura's surprise, Rachel's shoulders sagged. This isn't how any of this was supposed to go, Rachel murmured, almost to herself. Laura's grip on the mop tightened. What do you mean? Rachel glanced around, then gestured for Laura to follow her into an empty exam room. Once inside, she turned to Laura, her eyes filled with a mixture of defiance and desperation. You want to know the truth about your father? Rachel asked. He's not the mastermind behind this operation. He's the fall guy. Laura's heart raced. I knew it, she breathed. But why? Who's really behind this? Rachel shook her head. I can't. It's not safe. For either of us. But Laura, listen to me. Your father was trying to help people, patients who couldn't afford their medications. He got in over his head and now... She trailed off, her gaze distant. Why are you telling me this? Laura demanded. Why now? Rachel's laugh was bitter. Because I'm tired. Because this whole thing has spiraled out of control, and because... She hesitated, then continued, because Ethan is not the man either of us thought he was. Before Laura could press for more details, the door burst open. Dr. Jennings stood there, his face contorted with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing? He snarled at Rachel. Then turning to Laura, and you just can't leave well enough alone, can you? Laura backed away, her heart pounding. But Rachel stepped between them, her chin raised defiantly. It's over, Mark, she said quietly. We can't keep this up. Dr. Jennings' face turned an alarming shade of red. You stupid bitch, he hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? He lunged forward, his hand raised. Laura moved without thinking, shoving Rachel out of the way. Jennings's blow caught her across the cheek, sending her stumbling into a cabinet. The next few moments were a blur of shouting and motion. Security guards rushed in, restraining Dr. Jennings. Rachel was helping Laura to her feet, her face pale with shock, and then, cutting through the chaos, a familiar, gruff voice. Laura? Laura, are you all right? Oliver appeared in the doorway, his eyes scanning the scene before landing on Laura. He crossed the room in 2 quick strides, gently tilting her face to examine the bruise forming on her cheek. I'm okay, Laura assured him, though her voice shook slightly. Oliver, what are you doing here? Came to pick up a prescription, he said, his eyes never leaving her face. Heard the commotion. What happened? Before Laura could respond, Detective Simmons arrived, his face grim as he took in the scene. All right, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. I want statements from everyone, now. The next few hours were a whirlwind of questioning and paperwork. Laura's head spun as she recounted the events of the evening, carefully omitting her conversation with Rachel. She wasn't sure why she was protecting the woman who had helped destroy her life, but something told her It was important to keep that information close to her chest for now. As the sun began to rise, Laura found herself sitting on a bench outside the clinic, exhausted and overwhelmed. Oliver settled beside her, wordlessly offering a cup of coffee. "Thanks," she murmured, taking a sip. The warmth spread through her, a small comfort in the chaos of the night. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the city come to life around them. Finally, Oliver spoke. "You're in deep, Laura," he said, his voice low. "Deeper than you realize." Laura turned to him, studying his profile. "What do you know about all this, Oliver? And don't tell me nothing. Simmons warned me about you, said you have a complicated past." Oliver's jaw tightened. For a moment, Laura thought he might not answer. Then, with a heavy sigh, he began to speak. "I was a soldier," he said, his eyes fixed on some distant point. "Special forces. Saw things. Did things. That haunt me to this day. When I came back, I couldn't adjust. Ended up on the streets, addicted to painkillers." He paused, taking a sip of his own coffee. "Your father found me, helped me get clean, get back on my feet. He didn't just treat my physical pain, he treated me like a human being when the rest of the world had written me off." Laura's throat tightened with emotion. This was the father she remembered, the man who had dedicated his life to helping others. "So, when I heard about the accusations," Oliver continued, "I knew something wasn't right. Started doing some digging of my own. And Laura, this goes deeper than you can imagine. There are powerful people involved, people who won't hesitate to silence anyone who gets in their way." Laura's mind raced, connecting the dots. "That's why you moved in next door. You've been investigating too." Oliver nodded. "Trying to repay the debt I owe your father. But it's dangerous, Laura. These people, they're not just drug traffickers. They're using the clinic as a front for something much bigger." "What?" Laura pressed. "What are they really doing?" Oliver shook his head. "I'm not sure yet, but I'm close to finding out. And when I do—" He trailed off, his expression darkening. Laura reached out, placing her hand over his. "We'll face it together," she said firmly. "I'm not backing down now. Not when we're so close to the truth." Oliver's eyes met hers, a mix of admiration and concern in their depths. "You're braver than you know, Laura Carter," he said softly. "But bravery isn't always enough. We need to be smart, careful." As they sat there, the morning sun washing over them, Laura felt a shift in her relationship with Oliver. He was no longer just her gruff neighbor or an unexpected ally. He was becoming something more, someone she trusted implicitly, in a world where trust had become a rare and precious commodity. The next few weeks saw Laura and Oliver working together, piecing together the puzzle of the clinic's illegal operations. Laura continued her work as a cleaner, using her access to gather information, while Oliver put his military training to use, surveillance and information gathering. Their investigation led them down dark paths, uncovering a web of corruption that extended far beyond simple drug trafficking. They discovered evidence of money laundering, insurance fraud, and even human trafficking, all hidden behind the respectable facade of the Carter Reeves Medical Center. As they delved deeper, Laura found herself growing and changing in ways she never expected. The pampered doctor's daughter was gone, replaced by a woman of strength and determination. She learned to trust her instincts, to stand up for herself, to fight for what she believed in. But with each new discovery, each piece of damning evidence, came a growing sense of dread. The closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous their mission became. One evening, as Laura and Oliver pored over documents in his living room, a sharp knock at the door made them both freeze. Oliver motioned for Laura to stay quiet as he approached the door, his body tense and ready for action. When he opened the door, they were both shocked to see Rachel Sullivan standing there, her face pale and drawn. "I need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "They're coming for me. I know too much." Laura and Oliver exchanged a glance. This could be the break they'd been waiting for, or it could be a trap. As Rachel stepped into the house, her eyes wild with fear, Laura made a decision. Whatever the risks, whatever the consequences, she would see this through to the end. For her father, for justice, and for the woman she was becoming, the game was changing once again, the stakes higher than ever. And as the door closed behind Rachel, Laura knew that they were about to face their greatest challenge yet. In the days that followed, Laura's world became a delicate balance of secrets and revelations. Rachel's presence added a new layer of complexity to their investigation, her insider knowledge proving invaluable even as her motives remained questionable. Laura found herself in the strange position of working alongside the woman who had been her husband's mistress, their shared goal of exposing the truth, creating an uneasy alliance. It was during one of their late-night strategy sessions that Rachel finally opened up about her relationship with Ethan. "I never meant to fall in love with him," Rachel confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It started as a business arrangement. He needed someone on the inside of the clinic, someone who could access areas he couldn't. I needed the money." Laura's jaw clenched, the pain of betrayal still fresh. "And the children? Were they part of the business arrangement too?" Rachel flinched. That was unexpected. "But Laura, you have to understand, by the time I realized how deep this all went, how corrupt Ethan really was, I was in too deep. He threatened our children if I ever thought about leaving or talking." The revelation hit Laura like a physical blow. She had spent so long hating this woman, blaming her for the destruction of her marriage. But now, seeing the fear and regret in Rachel's eyes, Laura felt a surprising surge of empathy. "Why now?" Laura asked. "Why come to us for help?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Because I can't live with the guilt anymore. Because your father doesn't deserve to rot in jail for crimes he didn't commit. And because—" She hesitated, then continued, "because I think Ethan might be planning something big, something terrible." As Rachel shared what she knew about Ethan's plans, a massive insurance fraud scheme that would put countless patients at risk, Laura felt a cold determination settle over her. This was no longer just about clearing her father's name. It was about stopping a potential catastrophe. Oliver, who had been silently observing the exchange, finally spoke up. "We need to move fast," he said, his voice grim. "If what Rachel's saying is true, we don't have much time." Laura nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "We need concrete evidence, something that will force the authorities to act." "I might know where to find it," Rachel said hesitantly. "But it's risky. If we're caught—" "We won't be," Laura said with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "We can't afford to fail." As they formulated their plan, Laura couldn't help but reflect on how much she had changed. The woman she had been just months ago would have balked at the idea of breaking into offices and hacking into computer systems. But now, with so much at stake, she was ready to do whatever it took. The night of their planned operation arrived all too quickly. Laura found herself crouched in the shadows outside the clinic, her heart pounding as Oliver disabled the security system. Rachel waited nervously in the getaway car, ready to whisk them away at a moment's notice. As they slipped into the darkened building, Laura felt a surreal sense of déjà vu. How many nights had she walked these halls as a cleaner, never imagining she'd return as a burglar? They made their way to Ethan's office, Oliver keeping watch as Laura used the access codes Rachel had provided to unlock the computer. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, searching for the damning evidence they needed. "Hurry!" Oliver hissed from the doorway. "We don't have much time." Laura's heart leapt as she found what they were looking for: detailed plans for the insurance scam, along with records of past illegal activities. She quickly downloaded the files onto a flash drive, her hands shaking with adrenaline. Just as she was about to log out, a new email notification popped up. Laura's blood ran cold as she read the subject line: "Final phase. Carter elimination." Without thinking, she opened the email. The contents made her gasp in horror. It was a detailed plan to permanently silence William Carter, her father, in prison. The execution was scheduled for the next day. "Oliver!" Laura called out, her voice tight with fear. "We have a problem." But before she could explain, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the hallway. Oliver tensed, reaching for the weapon he carried. "We've got company," he growled. "Time to go." Laura grabbed the flash drive and hurried to the door, her mind reeling with the implications of what she'd just discovered. As they slipped out of the office, she caught a glimpse of familiar figures rounding the corner, Dr. Jennings and two men she didn't recognize, their faces hard and menacing. "Run!" Oliver commanded, pushing Laura ahead of him. They sprinted through the darkened clinic, the sound of pursuit close behind them. Laura's lungs burned as they burst through the emergency exit, setting off alarms that pierced the night air. Rachel was waiting, the car's engine already running. They dove into the back seat, and Rachel peeled away from the curb with a screech of tires. As they sped through the empty streets of Denver, Laura's mind raced. They had the evidence they needed to expose the entire operation, but at what cost? Her father's life was in immediate danger, and now they were all targets. "We need to go to the police," Laura said, her voice shaking. "Right now, before it's too late." Oliver shook his head grimly. "We can't trust the local cops. This goes too high up. We need to take this straight to the FBI." As Rachel navigated the car towards the nearest FBI field office, Laura felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. They were so close to unraveling everything, to exposing the truth and clearing her father's name. But the danger had never been greater. She thought of Katie, safely away at college, blissfully unaware of the danger her family was in. Laura's heart ached with the desire to protect her daughter, to shield her from the harsh realities that had become their new normal. As the city lights blurred past the car windows, Laura's mind drifted to Oliver. His steady presence beside her was a comfort she hadn't realized she'd come to rely on. In the midst of chaos and betrayal, he had become her rock, her partner in this dangerous dance of truth and lies. "We're here," Rachel announced, her voice tight with tension as she pulled up in front of the FBI building. Laura took a deep breath, clutching the flash drive that held the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. "This is it," she murmured, more to herself than to her companions. "Everything changes tonight." Oliver's hand found hers in the darkness of the car, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "we face it together." With a nod of determination, Laura stepped out of the car and into the cool night air. The imposing facade of the FBI building loomed before them, a beacon of hope and justice in a world that had turned upside down. As they approached the entrance, Laura's mind raced with all the twists and turns that had led her to this moment. From privileged doctor's daughter to night shift cleaner, from betrayed wife to determined investigator, she had been forged in the fires of adversity into someone stronger than she ever thought possible. The automatic doors slid open, and Laura stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She knew that by walking into this building, she was crossing a point of no return, but with Oliver by her side and the truth as her weapon, she felt ready for anything. What Laura couldn't know as she entered the FBI office was that her actions that night would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of Denver's medical and political establishments. The revelations contained in that small flash drive would lead to arrests at the highest levels, expose corruption that had festered for years, and ultimately change the course of many lives, including her own. As the doors closed behind them, Laura Carter took the first step towards reclaiming her life, her father's legacy, and a future she was only beginning to imagine. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, but for the first time in months, Laura felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it head-on. The game had changed, the stakes were higher than ever, and Laura Carter was playing to win. The fluorescent lights of the FBI conference room buzzed overhead as Laura, Oliver, and Rachel sat across from two stern-faced agents. Special Agent Melissa Chen and her partner, Agent David Torres, had been listening intently for hours as the trio laid out their evidence, their voices growing hoarse from the endless stream of explanations and clarifications. "Let me get this straight," Agent Chen said, her dark eyes sharp as she looked up from her notes. "You're alleging that Dr. Ethan Reeves, along with several other high-ranking staff members at the Carter Reeves Medical Center, have been running a multi-million-dollar drug trafficking and insurance fraud operation, all while framing Dr. William Carter for their crimes." Laura nodded, her throat dry. "Yes, that's correct. And there's more." She leaned forward, her voice urgent. "We have reason to believe they're planning to silence my father. Permanently. We need to act fast." Agent Torres exchanged a glance with his partner. "These are serious accusations, Ms. Carter. If what you're saying is true, we're looking at one of the biggest medical fraud cases in Colorado history." "It's all there," Oliver interjected, gesturing to the flash drive on the table. "Bank records, falsified prescriptions, evidence of kickbacks, everything you need to bring them down." Agent Chen nodded slowly. "We'll need time to verify all of this. In the meantime, I suggest you all find somewhere safe to lay low. If these people are as dangerous as you say, they won't take kindly to your interference." As they left the FBI building, the first light of dawn was breaking over the Denver skyline. Laura felt a mix of relief and apprehension. They had done it. They had brought their evidence to the authorities. But now came the waiting game, and with it, a new kind of tension. "What now?" Rachel asked, her voice small in the early morning quiet. Oliver's face was grim. "Now we disappear. At least until the FBI can move on this information." Laura's heart clenched. "But what about my father? We can't just leave him vulnerable in prison while we hide." "I might have a solution for that," a familiar voice called out. They turned to see Detective Simmons approaching, his face a mask of professional neutrality. "I've been working with the FBI on this case. We can arrange for your father to be moved to protective custody, Ms. Carter, but you three need to come with me. We have a safe house set up." As they followed Simmons to an unmarked police car, Laura felt as though she was stepping into a movie. Safe houses, protective custody, these were things that happened to other people, not to her. Yet here she was, about to go into hiding while the fate of her family and the truth she had fought so hard to uncover hung in the balance. The safe house turned out to be a modest cabin on the outskirts of Denver, nestled in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. As Laura stood on the porch, looking out at the vast expanse of wilderness before her, she felt both isolated and exposed. "It's not much," Simmons said apologetically, "but it's off the grid. You should be safe here while we process the evidence and prepare for arrests." The next few days passed in a haze of anxiety and restlessness. Laura, Oliver, and Rachel fell into an uneasy routine, each coping with the stress in their own way. Oliver prowled the perimeter of the property, his military training evident in his hypervigilance. Rachel alternated between bouts of nervous energy and periods of withdrawn silence. And Laura tried to hold it all together, her mind constantly racing with worry for her father and fears for the future. It was on the third day of their isolation that Laura's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her heart raced as she read the message. "I know where you are. We need to talk. Come alone to the clearing half a mile north of the cabin. 1 hour. E." Laura's hands shook as she deleted the message. Ethan. He had found them. But how? And what did he want? She knew she should tell Oliver, should alert Simmons and the FBI. But a part of her, the part that still remembered the man she had loved and trusted for so many years, wanted answers, needed them. Making a split-second decision, Laura slipped out of the cabin while Oliver was checking the back perimeter and Rachel was napping. The forest was quiet save for the crunch of leaves under her feet as she made her way north. As she entered the clearing, her heart pounding in her ears, she saw him. Ethan stood in the center, his once familiar face now a mask of tension and barely contained anger. "Hello, Laura," he said, his voice cold. "I see you've been busy." Laura steeled herself, lifting her chin defiantly. "It's over, Ethan. The FBI knows everything. You can't run from this anymore." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "You have no idea what you've done, do you? The forces you're messing with. This is so much bigger than you can imagine, Laura." "Then explain it to me," Laura challenged. "Make me understand how you could betray everything we built together, how you could frame my father, threaten his life." For a moment, Ethan's composure cracked, a flicker of the man she once knew shining through. "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice low. "When I first got involved, it was just about making a little extra money on the side. But then I saw how deep it went, how many powerful people were involved. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late to back out." "So you sacrificed my father instead?" Laura's voice shook with anger and disbelief. Ethan's eyes hardened. "Your father was never supposed to get hurt. He was supposed to take early retirement, step away quietly. But he kept digging, kept asking questions. They gave me a choice, him or our family." Laura felt as though she'd been punched in the gut. "Our family? You mean the family you built with Rachel while you were still married to me?" A flash of guilt crossed Ethan's face. "Laura, But whatever he was about to say was cut off by the sound of a twig snapping nearby. They both whirled to see Oliver emerging from the trees, his face a mask of fury. "Step away from her, Ethan," Oliver growled, his hand moving to the small of his back, where Laura knew he kept a weapon. Ethan's eyes darted between them, a look of understanding dawning on his face. "I see," he said softly. "So this is how it is now." Before anyone could react, the clearing erupted into chaos. FBI agents swarmed in from all sides, guns drawn. "FBI, freeze!" Agent Chen's voice rang out. In the confusion, Ethan made a break for the trees. Oliver moved to pursue him, but Laura caught his arm. "Let them handle it," she said, her voice trembling. "It's over." As they watched Ethan being tackled and handcuffed, Laura felt a complex mix of emotions wash over her. Relief, sadness, anger, and underneath it all, a profound sense of exhaustion. The next few weeks passed in a blur of depositions, court appearances, and media frenzy. The case against Ethan and his co-conspirators was building, strengthened by Rachel's testimony and the mountain of evidence Laura and Oliver had uncovered. William Carter was released from prison. The charges against him dropped as the true nature of the conspiracy came to light. The reunion between father and daughter was tearful and bittersweet, both of them changed by their ordeals. "I'm so sorry, Laura," William said, his voice breaking as he held her tight. "I never meant for any of this to touch you." Laura pulled back, meeting her father's eyes. "You have nothing to apologize for, Dad. You were trying to help people. It's Ethan and the others who twisted that into something ugly." As the date of the trial approached, the stress began to take its toll on Laura. She found herself snapping at Oliver over small things, then dissolving into tears of frustration and fear. It was during one of these moments, as Oliver held her while she cried, that Laura realized something had fundamentally shifted between them. The bond forged in the heat of danger and shared purpose had deepened into something more. "Oliver," she said softly, looking up at him, "what happens after all this is over? Where do we go from here?" Oliver's eyes, usually so guarded, softened as he looked at her. "Wherever you want, Laura. I'm not going anywhere." The moment was interrupted by Laura's phone ringing. It was Katie, her voice tight with anxiety. "Mom, I need to see you. It's important." Alarm bells rang in Laura's head. "Katie, what's wrong? Are you okay?" There was a pause. Then Katie's voice came again, small and frightened. "I'm pregnant, Mom. I don't know what to do." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Laura closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "Okay, sweetheart. It's going to be okay. I'm coming to you right now." As she hung up, Laura met Oliver's concerned gaze. "Katie's pregnant," she said, the words feeling strange on her tongue. "I need to go to her." Oliver nodded, already reaching for his keys. "I'll drive you." The drive to Boulder was tense, Laura's mind racing with all the implications of Katie's news. Her daughter was barely out of her teens, in the middle of her college education, and with the trial looming, the media scrutiny on their family. It was almost too much to bear. They found Katie in her dorm room, her face pale and tear-stained. As soon as she saw Laura, she burst into fresh tears. "I'm so sorry, Mum," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for this to happen. Andrew and we were careful. But—" Laura gathered her daughter in her arms, her own eyes filling with tears. "It's okay," she soothed, stroking Katie's hair. "We'll figure this out together." As Katie cried herself out, Laura's mind was working overtime. This was not how she had envisioned becoming a grandmother, but life, she was learning, rarely went according to plan. "Have you told Andrew?" she asked gently when Katie had calmed down. Katie nodded, hiccuping slightly. "He's been great, actually. He says he'll support whatever decision I make, but Mom, I'm so scared. With everything that's happening with the trial, and Grandpa and Dad, how can I bring a baby into all this?" Laura took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Katie, listen to me. What's happening with our family, with the trial, that's temporary, it will pass, but a child, that's forever. Whatever you decide, your father and I will support you, but don't make this decision based on fear of what might happen. Make it based on what you want for your future." As they talked through Katie's options, Laura felt a strange sense of déjà vu. She remembered being young and scared, facing an uncertain future. But she also remembered the joy Katie had brought into her life, the strength she had found in motherhood. By the time they left Boulder, Katie had decided to keep the baby. She would finish out the semester, then take a leave of absence to have the child. Andrew, to his credit, was fully on board, already talking about part-time jobs and online classes. As they drove back to Denver, Laura felt as though her world had shifted once again. She was going to be a grandmother. In the midst of all the chaos and pain of the past months, life was asserting itself, pushing forward with stubborn optimism. The day of the trial dawned bright and clear, the Denver courthouse surrounded by a sea of reporters and curious onlookers. Laura stood on the steps, flanked by her father and Oliver, facing the cameras with a mixture of determination and trepidation. "We're here today to see justice done," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach, "to bring to light the truth about the corruption that has plagued our healthcare system and to clear my father's name once and for all." As they entered the courtroom, Laura's eyes locked with Ethan's. Her ex-husband sat at the defense table, his once handsome face haggard and drawn. For a moment she felt a pang of what might have been, then she straightened her shoulders and took her seat, ready to face whatever came next. The trial was grueling, a marathon of testimony and cross-examination. Laura watched as witness after witness took the stand, painting a picture of greed, corruption, and callous disregard for patient welfare. She testified about her own experiences, her voice never wavering as she recounted the betrayals and discoveries that had led her to this moment. Rachel's testimony was particularly damning. She laid bare the entire operation, from the initial small-scale drug diversions to the massive insurance fraud scheme that had been in the works. As she spoke, Laura could see the color draining from Ethan's face. But it was William Carter's testimony that truly turned the tide. He spoke of his suspicions of the patients he had tried to help outside the system and of the threats that had been made against him and his family. "I have dedicated my life to healing," William said, his voice ringing through the hushed courtroom. "When I realized what was happening at my clinic, I couldn't stand by and do nothing. But I never imagined the depths of this conspiracy or the price my family would pay for my actions." As the trial neared its end, Laura found herself sitting in the witness waiting room, trying to calm her nerves before her final cross-examination. The door opened and to her surprise Ethan walked in, escorted by a guard. "Laura," he said, his voice low and urgent, "I need to talk to you." She stiffened, ready to call for the guard, but something in Ethan's eyes gave her pause. "What is it?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I'm going to plead guilty," he said. "To all of it. You were right, Laura. About everything. I've done terrible things. Things I can never make right. But I can do this. I can make sure the truth comes out fully and completely." Laura stared at him, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. "Why now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "Because I saw you on that stand. I saw the strength and integrity that I fell in love with all those years ago, and I realized how far I've fallen, how much I've lost." He paused, swallowing hard. "I know it doesn't change anything between us, but I hope it might help you and your father find some peace." Before Laura could respond, the guard was ushering Ethan out. She sat there, stunned, as the implications of what had just happened washed over her. The courtroom was packed as Ethan made his dramatic confession. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as he laid bare the entire conspiracy, sparing no one, least of all himself. Laura watched, her hand clasped tightly in Oliver's, as the man she had once loved and trusted brought the whole house of cards tumbling down. In the end, the verdict was swift and decisive. Ethan and his co-conspirators were found guilty on all counts. As the judge read out the sentences, decades in prison for most of the defendants, Laura felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, vindication, sadness, and underneath it all, a burgeoning sense of hope. As they left the courthouse, the late afternoon sun bathing the city in a golden glow, Laura felt as though a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Her father's name was cleared. The truth was out. Justice, imperfect though it might be, had been served. William turned to her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you," he said simply, pulling her into a tight embrace. "For believing in me, for fighting for the truth." Laura hugged him back, her own eyes welling up. "Always, Dad. Always." As they broke apart, Laura felt Oliver's steady presence beside her. She turned to him, a smile breaking through her tears. "We did it," she said softly. Oliver nodded, a rare smile lighting up his usually serious face. "You did it, Laura. You never gave up, never stopped fighting. You're the bravest person I know." In that moment, with the sun warming her face and the knowledge of all they had overcome, Laura made a decision. She reached up, cupping Oliver's face in her hands, and kissed him. It was a kiss of new beginnings, of hope reborn from the ashes of betrayal and loss. As they parted, both a little breathless, Laura saw Katie approaching, her hand resting protectively on her slightly swollen belly. The sight brought a fresh wave of emotion, joy, anticipation, and yes, a little fear. But as her daughter reached them, wrapping them all in a group hug, Laura knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The scandal that had rocked Denver's medical community was over, but its repercussions would be felt for years to come. As Laura stood there surrounded by her family, both old and new, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited to see where it might lead. The sun dipped below the Denver skyline, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and purple. As Laura stood there, surrounded by her loved ones, she felt a profound sense of closure mixed with the excitement of new beginnings. William cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "I think this calls for a celebration," he said, his eyes twinkling with a joy Laura hadn't seen in months. "Dinner, at that little Italian place we used to love. My treat." As they made their way to the restaurant, Laura found herself walking hand in hand with Oliver, their fingers intertwined in a gesture that felt both new and comfortingly familiar. Katie walked ahead with her grandfather, animatedly discussing plans for the baby's nursery. The restaurant was warm and inviting, the aroma of garlic and fresh herbs enveloping them as they entered. As they settled into their seats, Laura looked around the table, marveling at the unlikely family they had become. Her father, weathered but unbowed by his ordeal, Katie glowing with the promise of new life, Oliver, his usual stoic demeanor softened by the warmth of the moment, and even Rachel, who had joined them at William's insistence, sat awkwardly but gratefully at the edge of the group. As the waiter poured wine and sparkling cider for Katie, William raised his glass. "To truth," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "to justice, and to family, in all its forms." They clinked glasses, the sound ringing out like a bell of hope. As conversation flowed around her, Laura found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The pain, the betrayals, the moments of despair. They had all led here, to this table full of love and second chances. Oliver leaned in close, his voice low for her ears only. "You okay?" he asked, concern etching his features. Laura smiled, squeezing his hand. "More than okay," she replied. "I'm just taking it all in. A few months ago I thought I'd lost everything, and now you've gained so much more," Oliver finished for her, understanding shining in his eyes. As the evening wore on, filled with laughter, shared memories and plans for the future, Laura felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild, and a new life to prepare for. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The trial was over, the truth had come to light, and justice had been served. But Laura knew that the real work, of healing, of rebuilding, of creating a new kind of family from the ashes of the old, was just beginning, and as she looked around at the faces of those she loved, she knew that together they could face anything. As they stepped out into the cool Denver night, the stars twinkling overhead, Laura took a deep breath of the crisp mountain air. The city stretched out before them, a landscape of possibilities. Whatever the future held, she was ready to embrace it, with open arms and an open heart. The end of one chapter, Laura realized, was just the beginning of another. And this new chapter, with all its uncertainty and promise, was one she couldn't wait to write. Copy SL prosiga para parte 06. Conclusion. Minimum 12,000 characters. Show the aftermath of the climax. Resolve remaining conflicts and misunderstandings. Explore the changed dynamics between characters. Show Laura's decision to study medicine. Develop the evolving relationship between Laura and Oliver. Begin to wrap up character arcs. Edit. Here's part 06 of the story. The weeks following the trial unfolded like a dream for Laura, a stark contrast to the nightmare she had been living for months. As the dust settled and the media frenzy began to die down, she found herself navigating a new reality, one filled with both challenges and unexpected joys. The Carter Reeves Medical Center, once a beacon of hope and healing in Denver, now stood as a symbol of corruption exposed. The board of directors, in a desperate bid to salvage the clinic's reputation, approached William with an offer: return as chief of surgery, with full autonomy to rebuild the institution from the ground up. Laura watched her father wrestle with the decision, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions as they sat in his study one crisp autumn evening. "I don't know, Laura," William sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "Part of me wants to wash my hands of the whole thing, to walk away and never look back. But then I think of all the good we did there, all the lives we changed." Laura leaned forward, placing a hand on her father's arm. "Dad, if anyone can restore that clinic's integrity, it's you. But you don't owe them anything. This has to be your choice." William's eyes met hers, a glimmer of his old determination shining through. "You're right, and that's exactly why I have to do it." Not for them, but for the patients who deserve better, for the young doctors who need a mentor they can trust. As William threw himself into the monumental task of rebuilding the clinic's reputation and operations, Laura found herself at a crossroads of her own. The experience of the past months had awakened something in her, a desire to make a difference in a way she never had before. It was Oliver who first gave voice to the idea that had been germinating in Laura's mind. They were walking through City Park, the autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet, when he turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You know, the way you handled everything during the investigation, the trial, you've got a knack for piecing things together, for seeing the bigger picture. Have you ever considered going into law?" Laura chuckled, shaking her head. "Funny you should mention that. I've actually been thinking about going back to school, but not for law." She took a deep breath, suddenly nervous. "I'm thinking about medical school." Oliver's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but a smile quickly spread across his face. "Medical school? Laura, that's incredible. But it's a huge commitment. Are you sure?" Laura nodded, feeling more certain with each passing moment. "I am. Going through all of this, seeing how much good my father did and how much harm can be done when medicine is corrupted. I want to be part of the solution. I want to help people the way my father did." Oliver pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You're going to be an amazing doctor, Laura Carter, and I'll be right here, cheering you on every step of the way." The decision made, Laura threw herself into preparations, with the same determination that had carried her through the darkest days of the scandal. She enrolled in prerequisite courses at the University of Colorado, Denver, her days now filled with the challenges of organic chemistry and human anatomy. As Laura embraced her new path, she found her relationship with Oliver deepening and evolving. His steady presence and unwavering support became her anchor as she navigated the demanding world of pre-med studies. They fell into a comfortable routine, with Oliver often quizzing her on medical terminology over dinner or massaging her shoulders after long hours of studying. One night, as they sat on the porch of Oliver's house, watching the sun set over the Rockies, Laura turned to him with a question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Oliver, we've never really talked about your plans. With everything that's happened, with my decision to go to medical school, where do you see yourself in all of this?" Oliver was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the horizon. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but certain. "Right here, Laura, by your side, if that's where you want me." Laura felt her heart swell with emotion. "Of course it is," she whispered, leaning in to kiss him softly. "But what about your work, your life?" Oliver smiled, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "My work has always been about protecting people, making a difference. But after everything we've been through together, I'm starting to see that there are other ways to do that. I've been thinking about going back to school myself, maybe studying psychology, to help other veterans who've been through what I have." The idea of them both embarking on new educational journeys, supporting each other through late-night study sessions and exam stress, filled Laura with a sense of excitement and rightness. This was what partnership was supposed to feel like, growing together, challenging each other, building a future side by side. As Laura and Oliver's relationship blossomed, Katie's pregnancy progressed, bringing with it a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. Laura found herself in the unique position of being both a medical student and a soon-to-be grandmother, her textbooks often sharing space with baby name books and parenting guides. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Laura and Katie sat in the nursery they were preparing in Laura's new apartment, folding tiny onesies and discussing the future. "Mom," Katie began, her voice hesitant, "I've been thinking a lot about Dad lately, about whether I should tell him about the baby." Laura's hand stilled, a small blue sock clutched in her fingers. The mention of Ethan still had the power to send a jolt of pain through her heart, but she pushed it aside, focusing on her daughter's needs. "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed, "that's a big decision. How do you feel about it?" Katie shrugged, her hand absently rubbing her swollen belly. "I'm angry at him for everything he did to our family. But he's still my dad, you know? And this baby, it's his grandchild. I just don't know if I can cut him out completely." Laura moved to sit beside Katie on the small sofa, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Listen to me, Katie. What your father did was unforgivable in many ways. But the choice to have him in your life, in your child's life, is yours to make. No one can make that decision for you." Tears welled up in Katie's eyes. "What if I'm making a mistake? What if he hurts us again?" Laura pulled her daughter close, stroking her hair as she had when Katie was small. "Then we'll deal with it together. You're not alone in this, sweetheart. Whatever you decide, your family is here for you." As Katie's due date approached, Laura found herself marveling at the resilience of the human spirit. Here they were, planning for new life, new beginnings, in the wake of so much pain and upheaval. It was a testament to their strength, to the bonds that had been tested and ultimately strengthened by adversity. The baby's arrival, when it came, was a moment of pure joy amidst the ongoing challenges of their new lives. Laura stood by Katie's side throughout the labor, her medical knowledge now complementing her maternal instincts, as she coached her daughter through each contraction. When the tiny, red-faced infant was placed in Katie's arms, Laura felt a surge of love so powerful it took her breath away. As she looked down at her grandson, his tiny fingers wrapped around her own, she made a silent vow to protect him, to ensure that he grew up surrounded by love and integrity. Andrew, pale but beaming with pride, leaned in to kiss Katie's forehead. "He's perfect," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Just like his mom." Laura stepped back, allowing the new family their moment of privacy. As she did, she caught sight of Oliver standing in the doorway, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You okay?" she asked softly, moving to stand beside him. Oliver nodded, clearing his throat. "Yeah, I never thought I'd have this, you know? A family. After everything I've been through, everything I've done, I didn't think I deserved it." Laura reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "Oh, Oliver, you deserve every happiness. And this family, it's yours too if you want it." The look of wonder and gratitude in Oliver's eyes was answer enough. As they stood there, watching the new life that had entered their world, Laura felt a sense of completeness she had never known before. In the months that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. Laura threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor, more certain than ever that she had found her true calling. Oliver began his own journey into psychology, his quiet strength and deep empathy making him a natural in the field. William, true to his word, worked tirelessly to rebuild the Carter Reeves Medical Center, implementing stringent ethical guidelines and fostering a culture of transparency and accountability. Slowly but surely, the clinic began to regain its reputation as a place of healing and hope. Even Rachel, who had been adrift in the aftermath of the trial, found a new purpose. With Laura's cautious encouragement, she began working with a non-profit organization that supported women leaving abusive relationships, her own experiences lending weight and authenticity to her efforts. As for Ethan, his absence was a palpable thing, a shadow that lingered at the edges of their lives. Katie had ultimately decided to inform him of his grandchild's birth through a letter, leaving the ball in his court. His response, when it came, was a mixture of regret and tentative hope, a first step on what would undoubtedly be a long and complex journey of reconciliation. One crisp spring morning, nearly 2 years after the trial that had changed everything, Laura stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, adjusting the collar of her white coat. It was her first day of clinical rotations, the moment she had been working towards for so long. Oliver appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and meeting her eyes in the reflection. "Dr. Carter," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" Laura smiled, leaning back into his embrace. "Not quite yet," she reminded him. "Still got a long way to go." "Maybe," Oliver conceded, "but you'll get there." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. As Laura prepared to leave, her heart full of excitement and nerves, she paused in the living room. Her eyes fell on the photos that lined the mantel, her father in his surgical scrubs, Katie and Andrew with baby James, Oliver at his psychology program graduation, and there in the center, a new addition, a photo of Laura herself, taken on the day she was accepted to medical school, her face alight with joy and determination. It was a visual representation of how far they had come, of the new life they had built from the ashes of the old. There had been moments when Laura had thought she'd lost everything, but standing here now, she realized that she had gained so much more than she ever could have imagined. As she stepped out into the bright Denver morning, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Laura felt a profound sense of gratitude for the second chances, for the love that had sustained her, for the strength she had found within herself. The road ahead would not be easy. Medical school was demanding, and balancing her studies with family life would be a constant challenge. But Laura knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. With one last glance at the home she had built, both literally and figuratively, Laura set off towards her future. She was no longer just William Carter's daughter, or Ethan Reeves's ex-wife. She was Laura Carter, soon-to-be doctor, grandmother, partner, and survivor, and she was ready for whatever came next. As Laura drove to the hospital for her first day of rotations, her mind wandered to the journey that had brought her to this point. The pain and betrayal that had once threatened to break her had instead forged her into someone stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever to make a positive difference in the world. She thought of her father, who had taught her the true meaning of integrity and perseverance, of Katie and baby James, who reminded her daily of the preciousness of life and the importance of family, of Oliver, whose unwavering support and love had become the bedrock of her new life. But most of all, she thought of the patients she would soon be meeting, the lives she would touch, the differences she could make. It was a responsibility that both thrilled and humbled her. As she pulled into the hospital parking lot, Laura took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. She knew there would be difficult days, moments of doubt and exhaustion, but she also knew that she had the strength and the support to face them. Stepping out of her car, Laura straightened her white coat and lifted her chin. The morning sun caught the silver strands in her hair, a reminder of all she had been through and all she had overcome. With a heart full of purpose and a mind eager to learn, Laura Carter walked towards the hospital doors, ready to begin the next chapter of her extraordinary journey. The end of one story, she realized, was just the beginning of another. And this new story, with all its challenges and triumphs, was one she couldn't wait to write. 5 years later, the early morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Denver General Hospital as Dr. Laura Carter made her rounds. Her white coat, once a symbol of her aspirations, now felt like a second skin. She moved from room to room with confidence, her gentle demeanor and sharp mind a comfort to patients and a model for the young interns who trailed behind her. As she entered the last room on her rounds, Laura's face broke into a warm smile. "Good morning, Mr. Ramirez. How are we feeling today?" The elderly man in the bed grinned back at her, his eyes twinkling despite the tubes and monitors surrounding him. "Better now that you're here, Doc. When do I get to bust out of this joint?" Laura chuckled, checking his vitals. "Soon, Mr. Ramirez. Your recovery is progressing well. Just a few more days of observation, and you should be good to go." As she updated the patient's chart, Laura's mind drifted to how far she had come. The path to becoming a doctor had been grueling, filled with sleepless nights and countless sacrifices. But every challenge, every moment of doubt, had been worth it for moments like these, where she could make a real difference in someone's life. Her pager beeped, pulling her from her reverie. A quick glance told her she was needed in the ER. As she hurried down the corridor, Laura couldn't help but reflect on how different her life was now compared to those tumultuous days 5 years ago. The scandal that had rocked her world had long since faded from the headlines, but its impact lingered in the changes it had wrought. The Carter Reeves Medical Center, under her father's guidance, had become a model of ethical medical practice, its redemption a testament to William Carter's unwavering integrity. Laura's own journey from betrayed wife to respected physician had not been easy, but it had been transformative. The skills she had honed during the investigation, her attention to detail, her ability to connect disparate pieces of information, her unwavering determination, had served her well in her medical career. As she pushed through the doors of the ER, the familiar rush of adrenaline coursed through her veins. This was where she felt most alive, most purposeful. The chaos of the emergency room was a far cry from the privileged life she had once led, but Laura wouldn't have it any other way. Hours later, as her shift drew to a close, Laura found herself in the hospital's small chapel. It had become a habit of hers to spend a few quiet moments here at the end of each day, reflecting on the lives she had touched and the challenges she had faced. As she sat in the peaceful silence, Laura's thoughts turned to her family. Katie had blossomed into a wonderful mother, balancing her own budding career as a child psychologist with raising young James, now a precocious 5-year-old. Andrew had proven to be a devoted father and husband, his steady presence a balm to the wounds of the past. And then there was Oliver. Their relationship had deepened over the years, weathering the storms of medical school and the demands of their careers. His work with veterans suffering from PTSD had given him a sense of purpose that matched Laura's own passion for healing. They had built a life together that was rich with love, mutual respect, and shared dreams. Even Ethan, against all odds, had found a path to redemption. After serving his sentence, he had dedicated himself to working with addicts, using his own story as a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope for those struggling to rebuild their lives. His relationship with Katie and James was still fragile, but it was healing, one small step at a time. As Laura stood to leave the chapel, her eyes fell on a small plaque on the wall. It read, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." Albert Camus. The words resonated deeply with Laura. She had been through her own long winter, had faced betrayal and loss that once seemed insurmountable. But she had emerged stronger, more compassionate, more alive than ever before. Stepping out into the fading daylight, Laura took a deep breath of the crisp Denver air. The city sprawled before her, a landscape of possibilities. As she walked to her car, her phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. "Dinner's ready when you get home, love you." A smile played on Laura's lips as she typed her reply. This was her life now, full of purpose, love, and the quiet joy of ordinary moments. It wasn't the life she had once envisioned for herself, but it was richer and more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. As she drove home, Laura reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The betrayal that had once threatened to break her had instead become the catalyst for her transformation. The pain she had endured had deepened her empathy, making her a better doctor and a stronger person. Pulling into the driveway of the home she shared with Oliver, Laura felt a surge of gratitude for second chances, for the resilience of the human spirit, for the love that had sustained her through the darkest times. As she walked to the front door, Laura paused for a moment, looking up at the star-filled sky. The woman she had been 5 years ago would hardly recognize the person she had become. But that was the beauty of life, she realized. Every ending was just a new beginning in disguise. With a heart full of hope and a spirit tempered by adversity, Laura stepped into her home ready to embrace whatever the future might hold. She had learned the hardest lesson of all, that even in the face of betrayal and loss, love and integrity could triumph, that redemption was possible, and that the human heart had an incredible capacity for healing and growth. As the door closed behind her, Laura Carter, doctor, survivor, beloved partner, and grandmother, felt a profound sense of peace. She had weathered the storm, had rebuilt her life from the ashes of betrayal, and had emerged not just whole, but magnificently, gloriously alive. In the warmth of her home, surrounded by the love she had fought so hard to reclaim, Laura knew that all of this was just the beginning, and she was ready more than ever to write the next chapter of her extraordinary life. If this story touched your heart, and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now, and we'll see you there.